Hi there. So in this video, we're going to explore how you can set up an hourly check to make sure that you don't go over your budget target. To do this, we're going to use a new feature on PPC Samurai that we've called Check for Budget Overspend. And it's located in your client info screen within the Client tab. There is also a global view in the Settings tab, which we'll look at shortly. So to configure this on a per client basis, we'll go into our Check for Budget Overspend and click Configure. And in here we'll see a summary screen up the top, which is telling you exactly what the checker is currently scheduled to do. And then you'll see a second box down the bottom here that's got a whole lot of options that you can choose to enable or disable. So this checker is designed to ping AdWords every hour to check and see whether your spend has gone over any of the limits that you've predetermined in these settings. If you do go overspend, then the app will do what you told it to do here. So we'll work through those options now. So if I was just setting this on an individual client and I didn't want to use this functionality across many clients, I really just wanted to manage them on an individual client by client basis, I wouldn't be using any of the global settings here. I would just come in and I would do, for example, enable the spend checking module. So that's enabling this module to start with so that then we can then fill in the options down below. So then assuming that we've enabled this module, then we can say, all right, now that we've enabled the checks, alert me if I go overspend. And I can either use the standard contact email, which is in the global settings, or you can use a custom value just by typing in a separate email here. So wherever you want to get the alert email, and this could be an alert email sent off to an Asana inbox, for example, or it could be to a joint team inbox, or it could be to you personally. So for this example, I'm just going to use the global setting, which is the standard email address that's attached to the account. So by default, the system is going to check our spend versus target, first of all looking at the monthly target, which for this client is $800 for the month. So it's going to check every hour to see whether the account itself has spent more than $800 so far this month. Now, if I want to change that figure for whatever reason, let's say I wanted to have it checking maybe for $500. I could tick this box here and actually change this down to $500. And so even though I've got $800 in my client info screen as my monthly target, this particular checking module will now only be checking for $500. So in this case, I don't particularly want to do that, but that was just explaining what that option does. So if I leave that unticked, then by default, we will be checking against an $800 spend. Then we've got a second option here that's checking the daily spend. So if the daily spend goes over 2 times what it should for any given day, which in this case is $800 divided by 30.4 times 2. So that comes to $53.33. And so that coincides with the Google 200% rule. So if you've got clients that do tend to have wildly fluctuating budgets and you don't want them to spend over 2 times their daily allowance, then by default, if you enable this, it will go to that level. Now, again, you can change this. So if you actually want to lock down the spend to be no more than the daily allowance, then you could technically do that just by putting in this case, we put in $27 or whatever the half of 53.33 is. Can't work that out off the top of my head. So we can put that in there, or we could put a larger figure in there if we want a larger figure. Now, in this case, I'm just going to default to that. Then let's say it finds one of these options. So it actually finds that we've either spent more than our $800 or we've spent for the month, or we've already spent more than $53 for the day. Then what are we going to do? So the system will label by default a label on these campaigns that are currently active, and the label will be budget paused. But again, you can put in a custom value if you want to change that label and call it something else. You just put in a custom value in here, but I'm just going to use the standard. Now at this point here, we can choose to either enable the monthly check or the daily check or just either one of these. So I've currently got here under Enable Monthly Check, I've got Global Settings. So I would, if I'm just doing this at the client level, I would change that to Enabled, and I would possibly do that as well. So that's the daily check. So I've got the monthly check enabled and the daily check enabled. If I, for example, didn't want to check the daily spend, but I did want to check the monthly spend, then I would have enabled and disabled, and vice versa, the other way around. If I just wanted to check the daily spend to make sure I didn't go over a certain level at the end of each day, then this is the configuration that we'd have. But in this particular case, I do want to enable both. Now we go here to tell the system what to do when it finds one of these spend limits hit. Now in this case, I want to enable the pausing of any campaigns that go over budget. So if I've got 5 campaigns in this client and we go over our $800 for the month, currently what the system will do is it's going to pause those campaigns and email me on this email address that we set up here. Then we've got this next option here that's going to say, do we want to re-enable those campaigns when the start of the new billing period starts? So yes, I do want to enable those in this case. So what that means is that if we go over our monthly target, and it's say the 29th of the month, and the first of the month then ticks around, so our campaigns have been paused for a couple of days, the first of the month ticks around, the system will pick that up and it will re-enable those campaigns that are previously paused, and it will remove the label budget paused or whatever you've changed that to a custom label. So similarly for a daily check as well, if it goes to say $54 spend and then pauses, then first thing tomorrow morning, I think it's something like 1 past midnight or something like that, it turns the campaigns back on again and starts the daily spend for that day. So once you've been through and set up all of your client-specific settings here, you can hit Save, and that will come up with a summary of all of your actions here for you. And so you can just check through, and so just read through the actions here and just make sure that it's doing what you intended it to do. So in this case, we have enabled the budget checking. If we do detect an overspend, we're going to send an email to whatever email address you nominate. We're currently targeting a monthly spend of $800 and a daily spend of $53. If we go overspend, we're going to pause the campaigns and mark them with this label, budget paused. We have enabled the monthly spend check and the daily spend check. We've also enabled the campaigns to be paused if they go over, and also re-enabled, but re-enabling the campaigns is also being set up to run automatically. So as it stands, this client is going to be paused and then re-enabled if it goes over either of these figures here. So I would just hit OK, and then that client has been set up to work with the hourly checker. So that's done at a client level. If you wanted to do this on a more broad basis and you wanted to potentially manage it for multiple clients, you would do that in the Settings tab. So let's jump in and have a look at that now. So once we're in the general settings, we come across here to the spend check option up the top. And we click into that. And then we'll see a bunch of options here where we can do very similar to what we just showed before, but we're doing this at a global level. So we would go through, and to mimic what we just did before, we would enable the module. So this enables it for everybody. We could set up custom alert emails, custom labels. We can enable the monthly check, the daily checks. We can enable pausing the campaigns, and we can enable re-enabling the campaigns. So if we tick those boxes, that will enable this module for all clients. So you must make sure that you've got a budget target set for every client. If you don't have a budget target set for a particular client, then even though we've got this enabled, it won't run on that client because obviously you will always be overspend. So that client would otherwise be paused all the time. So if there is no budget set for a particular client, then the system, even though it's enabled, it won't make any changes. But as soon as you've got a budget set for a client, then the system will pick that up and start checking on an hourly basis. And we can see in here that we've got a log of every time the system has checked And so that log is down here, and it tells us on the right hand side, it gives us any information in terms of what warnings or what action was taken. Then in the middle here, you can actually see what the action was that was undertaken at that point in time. This log covers all clients and all budget checks done for all clients, but there is actually a client-specific one back in the configuration menu that we were in before within the client themselves when we were setting up the settings for them. If we scroll down to the bottom, any checks that are done on that particular client are also logged there just for that client. So now that we've configured our global settings, it might be a great time to go and check that all of our budgets are actually correct for each client. So we can do that. Up the top here, you'll see a new button called Mask Client Edit. So in here, you'll see a list of all of your clients down the left here, and then basically every option that's available to configure at the client info level is now in here, but it's done on a mass scale. So you can easily look at all of your clients and, for example, scan down your target monthly budgets and actually make changes in here for every client that you want to change budgets to. So if you regularly go through and you update your budgets for each client, say the beginning of each month or something like that, then you can jump in here into Mass Client Edit and just scan down and make any changes that were required in here. So if that client, for example, has got 0 budget, I could come in here and actually change that to be whatever I needed it to be. I can also then change, see here, spend check settings. So these are all the same options that we had when we were in the individual client, where we can enable or disable particular elements of the spend check. So you can do all of that in here at a mass level, and essentially make sure that all of your settings for all of your clients look right. So it probably wouldn't hurt as a good practice to come in here occasionally and just scan down each one of these columns, and they're all sortable if that makes life easier. And then just make sure everything looks right. Any of your custom variables, by the way, just as an aside, if you've got custom variables in place, then all your custom variables are in here as well. So if you're importing a whole bunch of new clients, for example, then you can apply all the templates for those clients and then jump in here and then do all your client settings for those clients. Thanks for listening, and as always, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Bye.